Okay, I have to warn you guys, I don't have very many green puns, but I think we'll make it through this video. And the first thing I did for this project was break the lead of my pencil after one letter. Woohoo! Hey y'all, it's Alex and welcome back to my channel. Today I've got the next video in my One Color Family Challenge set, the greens. This was voted for in my all red video, which I can link below. At least I'm pretty sure it was my all red video. I can link the actual one below if it wasn't. I find that I don't grab for the greens very much unless it's an olive tone. While I like the shades, I don't make very many pieces that require greens. In the past few weeks I have done a few more natural themed pieces, so they've been seeing a little bit more action, but my greens collection definitely deserves some more love. This is the one set I think that has the second widest range of all of my utensils. I've got a good amount of Copic markers, a surprisingly wide range of Bic marking markers, gel pens, liner pens, and acrylic paints. It's only missing acrylic inks and gouache, and that's where blue will have it beat. Let me cut my voiceover self off here for a minute. I hate how sometimes the packaging is green. Like, I qualify this cap as a green. Like, this entirely looks like it would be a highlighter green to me. That doesn't quite, it's like borderline. And that's my one problem with these challenges, is like I would have counted this with the yellows, probably. It's just, where do you draw the line when everything is a spectrum? Back to the voiceover and back to not blurry. I also found that a surprising amount of my pens were dead, including some of my line-on pens and my favorite dark green metallic jelly roll. The line-ons I'm not surprised by. These are my cheap gel pens that I got for Christmas last year, and I did a video with those and I can link that around here somewhere. But the loss of a jelly roll is a damn shame. Moving on to the concept, the first thing that came to mind while I was sketching was something that I was told all the time when I was a kid, and I looked everywhere for this saying, but I couldn't find anything about it. The saying is, if you're wearing green and you find a slug, you have good luck. I don't remember how long this good luck is supposed to last. I don't remember who said this to me. My older sister remembers hearing this phrase, but no matter how hard I looked online, I couldn't find anything in connection between slugs and green. So, if anybody has ever heard this saying, please tell me I'm not alone in the comments section. So, my sketching process started with a slug over in my sketchbook. I decided that this slug would make an excellent steed for this halfling character I created. Who knows, maybe this is another pixie related to the bee riding warrior fae I made for my all yellow piece. In the thumbnailing process, I laid out a portrait piece that felt very similar to that piece, so I decided to change it up, and I did a landscape piece like I've done for the past few. I think it might just be the size of my paper restricting my compositions, but I haven't felt like doing portrait pieces in a hot second. And as I was moving through sketching this piece, I realized that I was intending to make a majority of the background grassland, because, I mean, it's green, and also I have two different tones of Copic markers, so that way I can actually use those to make dual-toned grass texture. However, I just did that grass texture in my all-purple piece, and I didn't want to do the exact same thing all over again. So I changed up the environment. Instead, this scene is going to be taking place in a desert. This halfling and his enchanted slug steed are traveling towards a crystal spire to investigate the forest it's producing from nowhere. The trees I added in is kind of like one tie-in to the fact that there's greenery in the scene. Another small detail I added in was this other figure standing on these rocks kind of closer to the forest. Maybe this is the mage responsible for the reactivation of this tower. Maybe it's just another vagabond coming to investigate. And maybe this is a character I'll create in one of my later Color Family challenges. We'll just have to see. Something I struggled with in the sketching of this piece was why in the hell would someone ride a slug into a desert? It would desiccate before you made it 20 feet. I sketched an enchanted rain cloud above it first, like the halfling man decided to make that so that way it would rain on the slug and keep it wet, but I decided that was a little bit clunky and a little bit roundabout, especially when the slug has a coating of slime already. The halfling man could have just as easily enchanted the slug's slime as he could have made an enchanted cloud. So that's why I later put like a shimmery texture, like the 2D sparkles around it, and that's why it's kind of floating off in blobs. So its slime is impenetrable to heat and dryness. So just little background ideas of the logic of this world, because that's something I struggle with every time I try to do something fantastical. Things still need to have reason, and I don't like pushing that too far. And I feel like I say that just about every other video, and I'm very sorry about that. Coloring this piece was surprisingly hard for me. Green is one of those colors where, at least in my collection, it feels like everything I have is either fluorescent or really dark. The balance felt all wrong in this piece. And that might just be the caps were portraying things as being a lot lighter, but everything ended up being super dark or super dull, and I just did not have a fun time with deciding where a lot of these things could go, because one upside about doing these super illustrated pieces and detailed pieces is that you're never hurting for spaces to use utensils. The problem is you're hurting because there's so many utensils that can be used in these places. The lack of light greens in my collection might be a reflection of my lack of using green. I haven't needed to fill out the light end of my range, and typically the colors that they give you are the darker, you know, that normal green color, like the Crayola green, that kind of dark tone. You either get that tone or like a lime green, and that's primarily what my collection is made up of. So I just need to flesh out my collection or invest in more watercolors. One thing I'm not sure of with watercolors in these one color family challenges is whether or not it's okay to dilute them. I have been, just because that makes it a lot easier on me, but I feel like it would be more of a challenge to use everything as it is, at the full value of at its full pigment value. I just don't know whether or not I'd be able to effectively make a good piece while keeping that in mind. I tried using primarily watercolor brush pens for the sky so I could attempt to do a normal gradient instead of my usual dashing technique. It could use some work, but it isn't the downfall of this piece. The downfall of this piece to me is the dunes in the distance. I don't know what it is about me and watercolors, I just don't like them and don't enjoy the texture they leave behind. I also had a lot of problems with, I was laying down watercolor next to the watercolor that I used for the sky, and the color leached across, and I'm just not very patient when it comes to watercolors. I'm going to hopefully spend a little while practicing with watercolors once I've moved into my new apartment, but we'll see about that. I think I just enjoy my markers a whole lot more. Certain things that I don't enjoy about this piece focus around the slug. It's supposed to have eyes, like it did in my original sketch in my sketchbook, but I wasn't settled on how they looked in that sketch, and when I went to do the line art in the final piece, I didn't include the eyes, and it just kind of stuck that way. And in my original sketches, I included this war paint that this guy put on the face of his steed to make it look more intimidating, and I'm not 100% sold on how that looks either. I'm just going to conclude that this is one of the few pieces where I enjoy the background a whole lot more than the characters. The rocks that these figures are standing on have this super fun Swiss cheese texture. I've been calling it, but that's just because I don't particularly enjoy the phenomena it's based off of. It's based off of honeycomb weathering, and for those of y'all with trypophobia, don't look at it in actual pictures. I don't know why I'm okay with looking at some honeycomb weathering. Like, it kind of gives me the heebie-jeebies, but it doesn't all the time. But like, beehives, 100%. Heebie-jeebies, can't look at that. No thank you. But, honeycomb weathering is, well, the way I was taught what honeycomb weathering is that it's primarily in sandstones and is caused by loose sand carving pits in salt-rich rocks, which are more prevalent to erosion. There's some cases where it can happen in non-sedimentary rocks, and it's usually a small and irregular texture, but I didn't want to freak myself out while drawing it, so I made it these elongate lobes, almost like lenses of erosion. And besides, this is a fantasy world. We could have some funky, magical erosion textures if we want. I enjoy the texture. I wish I would have been able to make it feel a little bit more random. You know how when you're drawing things, and like, say you're trying to put sprinkles on top of an ice cream cone, it's just very hard to make it feel random while also making it aesthetically pleasing. I had that same problem with the lobes inside of the rock. For those of y'all who are thinking, if you have trypophobia, why are you drawing a thing that might give you trypophobia? First of all, I wouldn't actually have continued with it into the final piece if I couldn't handle it. Obviously. Like, I would not force myself through that. However, I wanted to have texture that didn't include end-to-end layers of strata. I wanted the rocks to look more cohesive instead of having defined chunks in it. Whatever rock unit this is from is supposed to be incredibly massive, and these are just chunks that are weathering off the top of it, or maybe were brought from somewhere else long ago. I didn't want it to look more like shale. It's supposed to be thickly bedded, so there's not supposed to be all these little lines cutting all the way through it, but I still wanted there to be texture, if that makes sense. At the end of this piece, I think I should have added a hint of stars at the top of the sky, just because the sun is setting, but I'm glad that I didn't add that in. For any of you wondering about the sun, it is not in fact a pierceling. I kind of realized that it did kind of look like one after the fact, but it's supposed to be this kind of aura that comes off of the sun when its light is refracting through snow crystals in higher altitudes. Overall, this piece doesn't beat the purple one, but I do enjoy it quite a lot. I'm sad that the rhinestones couldn't make a return, but they will be coming back in the next piece, which is blue. That was voted for on one of my previous videos, and I'm going to post the poll for the next video in the queue right up here. Check the top right corner to vote for which piece will follow the blue. We're getting pretty darn close to the end of this series now, so we're going to have fewer options. However, I've decided that I'm going to separate out the blues from the teals because I have just that many that I can separate them out from each other and have a full group of each. It might be cheating, but teal is my favorite color that isn't black, so I'm going to treat myself. I hope you are all excited to see the all blue piece next, and don't forget to vote for the next in queue. If you'd feel so inclined, hit that subscribe button and check me out on my other social media handles. Thanks, and I'll see you all in the next one.